Hi, this is my first video and I'm going to be talking about historical revisionism and why it's unhelpful for the Marxist-Leninist movement. Um, Basically, your normal kind of average person has a very limited knowledge of communism. They're going to hear very few, they'll hear about it at school, or they'll see it in movies, or like me, the first time I heard about communism was playing Red Alert, the Soviets. So, they'll get like a snapshot of what Marxist-Leninism is all about. Um, Normally, the education and its representation in the media is extremely negative. I remember basically all I was taught about in school was kind of Stalinism, the kind of collectivization process, um, Prague Spring, Hungarian intervention, um, maybe a little bit about kind of the Cultural Revolution, all from a very one-sided kind of point of view, with, a very negative slant. So, looking into the mind of the person who isn't sympathetic or isn't kind of knowledgeable on communism, they'll automatically have, view it as an extremely brutal regime. They'll associate it with sort of the worst parts of human history. They'll associate it with North Korea, and North Korea isn't, any Marxist will pretty much now say that North Korea is not a communist state. They haven't been for quite a long time. They don't call themselves communists, and in my opinion, they're more like national socialists. And I'm going to do a video in the future about kind of why I feel that North Korea is a Nazi state. So anyway, they got an overwhelmingly negative viewpoint, and the thing that actually sparked my thinking on this was a comment on the Proletarian CPGBML, that's the Communist Party of Great Britain Marxist-Leninists YouTube channel. They are an anti-revisionist party. They are pro-Stalin, they are pro-Gaddafi, they are pro-North Korea, and I don't support them. I'm not a member of them. I don't associate them with anyway. And a comment left on their YouTube profile by NHS Information, who are they're creating awareness for the anti-cuts in relation to the NHS campaign. And they put, every time you wankers fly a hammer and sickle flag on events like anti-cuts or pro-NHS demo, you successfully alienate hundreds of ordinary people. Please fuck off. Seriously, go away. Your selfish ideological obsessions and crass insensitivity to the victims of an authoritarian communism are ruining things for everyone. Now, I don't know if every kind of ordinary person really does feel this way. Like I say, the education they would have had about communism is a vague association with the hammer and sickle of Marxist-Leninism and kind of the worst aspects of it. So, well, I don't know if it's true that, hundreds of people were alienated by it, but it is more than possible that hundreds of people attending events like that could have negative connotations of Marxist-Leninism ingrained in their minds. And this is an important issue. We have to address this if we're to move forward. So I'll now look at basically the three ways I see that communist parties, at least in Britain, lots of communist parties all over the world, a million different views. But the ones in Britain I can divide into three groups. So you've got the anti-revisionists. These are the parties like the Communist Party of Great Britain Marxist-Leninist, the New Communist Party, there are a couple of others, but they're tiny. These parties are pretty damn small and not significant. And as I mentioned earlier, they're pro-Stalin. To an extent, they may be pro-Mao or pro-communist Albania. They're often very supportive of regimes like Iran, which is ridiculous. That's about as uncommunist as you can get. Like North Korea, which I explained earlier, in my opinion, is a Nazi state. probably even of Syria. Basically, anybody who's anti-imperialist, anyone who America would consider an enemy, they support on that basis alone, in my opinion. Um, so their approach to dealing with the crimes of communism is basically to say they didn't happen. For example, the whatever famines may have taken place, they say they didn't happen, or they weren't as bad as Western propaganda would have you think. They, for example, the Stalin show trials, they say these are democratic processes. And of course, they lay heavy emphasis on the good social services aspects of these regimes that they support. Now, my opinion on this is whether or not you think these, as a Marxist, whether or not you think these, crimes or these famines happened or not, is kind of relevant on this issue, because the ordinary person may not be sympathetic to the idea of Marxism. So I find whitewashing it is not helpful. That brings me to the second group, which is I will refer to as historical revisionism. These parties, the main one I can name at the moment, I guess, is the Communist Party of Britain, who I am kind of affiliated with, but I'm getting slightly less interested as days go on. And they lay out in Britain's Road to Socialism, which is quite a good manifesto, I suppose, but they lay out a very kind of rosy view of China as it is now. I and most communists view China as being a capitalist state, but I guess they still view it as being a worker state or some kind of socialist state. Again, they may give a token acknowledgement that Stalin was pretty fucking out of order during the 1930s, but they'll focus on the good things he did and, whitewash a lot of the problems that were apparent in the way they kind of ran things. And again, the problem is they're not separating themselves from Stalin in that way. They're not separating Marxist-Leninism as a movement going towards the future from the mistakes that it's made in the past. The third group is groups like Trotskyism, left communism, my own party that I'm mostly associated with, which is the Communist Party of Great Britain Provisional Central Committee. And, Trotskyism, left communism, anarchist communism, they kind of have some kind of moral high ground because they've never actually taken power. They've never ruled in any capacity. Anarchist communists, they did control areas of Spain and Ukraine at separate points in time for about a period of 3 years each. But these were in the middle of massive kind of civil wars where, there was basically no other government to take control. The instability was severe. And they managed to organise themselves and, create a pretty good lifestyle, a pretty good situation in the areas they controlled. But unfortunately they had no proper means to defend themselves from fascists in the case of Spain, and from communists in the case of southern Ukraine. So my party's line is they seem to be moving towards advocating Karl Kautsky's idea of civic republicanism, and I guess that's based on the kind of the early ideas of how the Paris Commune sort of worked. But okay, that's great, but it does not help. What I'm basically saying is that people have an association in their mind because of education, because of propaganda, or because of the way it's portrayed in films. The hammer and sickle, Marxist-Leninism equals death, equals communism killed 100 million billion people. And it's almost like a curse, it's like Stalin has laid an eternal curse on the Marxist movement forever. It's blotted our history. And the problem is, you can easily say that, oh, capitalism has killed way more people than communism. You can easily say that, you know, capitalist countries, our own countries, are committing human rights abuses right now. But basically, at the end of the day, that won't convince somebody to move over to the side of socialism. So while it's important to, you know, big up the positive sides of the various communist countries that existed in the past, we have to find a coherent way to deal with the crimes of it in the public mind, to separate those past crimes with the future movement. So my question to you is, how can we lose the curse of Stalin? Do we give up the symbols like the red flag and the hammer and sickle, which existed way before Stalin, and all this negativity? These are old symbols that they're around not for a long time before the Soviet Union, but before it, and have been long, old and traditional, and we are united by tradition, whether we say or not. The tradition of the workers' movement, and they're heavily associated with it. So is there a way that we can separate Stalin from the future workers' movement? Is there a way we can lose this negative connotation of Stalin's crimes from the public non-communist mindset of how Marxist-Leninism works? I don't think it's helpful for us to simply whitewash it. I don't think it's simply for us to only concentrate on the good sides. We have to tackle the reasons why things like Stalin's power actually kind of ruled. So if anyone's got any good ideas on that, and has something better to say to me than communism killed 1 million people, you should die and go to hell, why do you hate your country, you're gay. If anyone's got something better and more intelligent than that to say to me, please message me and tell me what you think. Also, as a quick note, this is something I'm sure our National Socialist and fascist friends have to deal with. You know, if you feel like helping out another radical, even if we're on the other side of the firing lines, then go ahead, because I'm sure you have to deal with this a lot more than me. Because, you know, a lot of people I talk to don't know anything about communism, but they know a hell of a lot about National Socialism and fascism. So I guess in that sense we've got it kind of easy. At least in England, we didn't have intense McCarthyism like we did in America. McCarthyism actually worked a treat. That guy was a genius. Joe McCarthy, you know, how he convinced people to hate communism the way he did was fantastic. If only we could find a way to make them love communism like that without pointing guns at them. So, anyway, that's about 30 minutes of me rambling. This is only my first video, so it's kind of shitty, but I hope it'll get better in the future. So, yeah, goodbye.